Welcome to Value Through Vulnerability. This is a podcast from the listening organisation dedicated to putting the human back into humanity. And today I'm really excited to introduce you to Stephanie Barnes, who is Chief of Creativity and Analytics at Entelechy. Good morning, Stephanie.
Morning, Gary. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing today?
Excellent.
For anybody that's not only listening by audio and not by video, I have to let you know there's an incredible backdrop that Stephanie has behind her, which is a very colourful wall, and it's amazing. So if you're only listening by audio, make sure you go and see the video if Stephanie puts it on her site.
Thanks.
So do you mind letting people know as we get going a bit more about you? So where did the name Entelechy come from, and also what do you do for work?
Sure. Entelechy is actually a new brand for me. I started last summer. I decided that I need to focus on creativity and innovation, which is really my focus and my passion. And I was looking for a new name, and I was looking for actually an untranslatable word. And because I'm learning German, so I thought, oh, maybe there's a German word that I could use that would kind of describe. And I'm going through and couldn't find anything. And you know how you do when you're Googling and following links and things. I came across Entelechy, and it's an English word that's perfectly definable. It means realization of potential. And as soon as I saw that definition, I thought, oh, that's my word, that's my brand, that's me. Help people realize what they're doing, or realize their potential, whether as individuals or as organizations. To realize their potential. See, I'm so excited. I'm getting tongue-tied. And that's what I do. I help organizations and people be more creative and innovative and relearn. I think we all start out as children, and creative. I know certainly I had my creativity as a child, and it gets educated out of us. And there's lots of people on YouTube talking about this and TED Talks and things of how education educates our creativity right out of us. So I'm working with people to relearn that and learn that's really not so scary. And we all have these nightmare stories from when we were kids about teachers that criticized us because we couldn't draw a straight line, or we didn't draw a tree that looked like a tree, or whatever the injury was. And so we're hugely afraid of this, but there's so much that we can learn through relearning that creativity and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable again and to try and see what happens and discover that the floor doesn't open up and swallow us whole when we get brown paint in our yellow paint.
I love that. Thanks for the introduction, Stephanie. I'd like to go to a little bit actually. So you just said you're learning German, and
yes.
If anyone listening to us, I believe you're based in Berlin. I
am. I'm Canadian. Moved to Berlin about 3.5 years ago. So my goal in life, one of my goals in life, is to learn German. So
that's amazing. And so what was it that took you to Berlin? What was it that inspired you to move there out of interest?
The short version is that it was time for a change. I had spent my life growing up in and around Toronto and in Canada. And Canada, people will say, oh, Canada's lovely. Why would you ever move from Canada? But it was time for a change. I needed to be somewhere else. It didn't feel like I really fit in Canada, despite having been born and raised there and spent, my entire life there. And Berlin has a sense of, for me at least, a sense of home. When I came, it's like, oh, this feels like home. There's an energy here. And I get homesick when I leave Berlin. So I never leave from Berlin. I haven't been back to Canada since I left, which people always find surprising. And it's not that I don't have friends and family there. I do, but this is home. I get homesick. So
listen, what's really lovely, what came up for me, you talk about energy. Is energy important to you, both in your work and you personally?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is, one of the things I love about my work. It really does energize me. And so I get the feeling sometimes in working with people, working with organizations, that's kind of how I make decisions is, does it feel right? Do I get a good energy, a good vibe, which sounds a little airy fairy new age. I get that, but it really is important to me that, because it underlies what the energy I think is doing for me is pointing out things that I can't quite immediately observe in the physical world, that there's something that's not quite right, you know. And oftentimes it's a sense that people aren't being honest with themselves. And so it's not that they're lying to me necessarily, but they're lying to themselves and not being honest about what it is that they want and need from, you know, from the work that I would do with them. And if they can't be honest with themselves, they're definitely not going to be honest with me. And so it makes the work that much more difficult, and I need to question whether it's the right thing for me and the right thing for them. So
yeah, that's really powerful, and I'm sure this will be a thread as we go through. And isn't it funny how we, still in 2019, we almost have to justify talking about energy and maybe more sort of spiritual elements of our human experience, because people are just not used to it.
Yeah,
we use it, don't we? It's quite interesting still.
Yes. Well, and you say it's 2019, but you know, I graduated high school in 1986, which, you know, honestly doesn't seem like that long ago. But you know, I look at it and I look at the feminism and where women's role, and I actually said this to somebody last week. I don't feel like in 30 years, you know, anything has changed for women's role in the workplace. It's like, how, you know, and yet we say there and go, oh, it's 2019. Yeah, it's 2019 and nothing has changed, you know.
Fair challenge. No.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get us off on a tangent, but
but I think it's super relevant, because, you know, we are talking about energy. We're talking about your role in helping people be more innovative, more creative, and as this podcast is about the more sort of human elements of life, you know, how do people need to show up to get the most out of doing work with you, out of interest, in an organizational context?
just be curious and be open, you know, trying things. The workshops I do with organizations, we're trying different things. We're doing some brainstorming around a business problem generally, or some work around, you know, some kind of a business problem, but we're using some new methods, some things to get them out of their comfort zones and stop doing the things the way that they've always done them. Because if you want something new and innovative, you got to do something new and innovative to get there. So, you know, I do a little bit of guided meditation in the workshops. I do some drawing, and if I have time, if I, you know, luxury have 2 or 3 days to do a workshop, or even a week to do a whole retreat or something, we can do some painting and do a whole lot more things, and have a lot more discussions, and just I encourage people to try things with these, you know, whether we're doing some music or poetry or painting or whatever we're doing, just try. You know, if you want to see what happens when you mix 2 colors of paint together, well, try it and see what happens. You know, no one's going to come down and rip your paper up, or, you know, throw it and go, oh, you know, this is why. No, this is not. No, you wanted to find out what happened when you mix those colors together. Now you know. I'm not going to come and yell at you. I'm going to give you a gold star, or, you know, the equivalent of a, you know, pat on the back, because yay, you tried. This is fantastic. You had a question. You went out and found an answer. So this is not something to be punished. This is something to be rewarded.
Isn't it fascinating? I love the metaphor that you just used about mixing the two colors, because I think there's something there around inclusion and diversity as well. You know, if we look at it from an organizational context, if we're not mixing intentionally the different colors and backgrounds, belief systems of different people, we're just missing a huge opportunity, aren't we?
Absolutely. Diversity is so important. Having people from different backgrounds and experiences, rather than, you know, having, oh, I have an accounting background. So, you know, having a room full of accountants is, I'm sorry to say, pretty boring. Just to, you know, play up the stereotype. It's true. There's a reason for stereotypes sometimes. But you know, having a room that's made up of creative people, you know, artists and IT people and accountants and, you know, all kinds of people with all kinds of backgrounds and things, we get much more interesting discussions. We get much more interesting results to our problems, because the accountants all sit there and look at them, go, well, this is the way we've always done it. And yeah, I don't really have any new ideas, because we all have the same experience and we're all just coming up with the same things. But add an engineer or add an artist in there, you know, and some companies have gone the step of having an artist in residence, which I love the idea of, you know, and they come and do an art project. They, you know, they have a theme or something that they're working on for their own practice, but they also participate and work with the organization to insert creativity into the organization's activities and help them think about things differently and try and do different things with their products and services and ask questions that they might not have answered otherwise, just because the artist has a different background, different perception of what they want to do with this organization.
We can't let that point go. An artist in residence within an organization.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So is that something you're seeing as being a more common, is that something that you're involved in yourself?
I would love to be involved in. I haven't found the right organization yet for me. I'm still, holding out hope, but yes, I'm seeing more of that. The first case study that I'm aware of was actually Xerox in the 1990s. Brought scientists in to work with artists in to work with the scientists in Research Park in Palo Alto. And it was meant to be a 1-year program, just a trial, see, what happened, but it was so successful. And the artists asked the scientists so many questions and wanted to do so many other things with the technology that they were developing that the program actually lasted for 5 or 6 years or 7 years because of the success of it, and as what often happens, the program ended when management changed and, the new person came in and didn't get it anymore. And, that was the end of it. But like I say, it was so successful, it lasted for so much longer than the 1-year trial was originally envisioned for. So, but I have heard of, other organizations doing similar things now. So it's maybe this podcast will help the idea to catch on more. So,
That's all. I guess in my head, I can totally perceive the value. I can totally see it, and I guess there's something here. There's a lot of talk at the moment, like Amy Edmondson's work around psychological safety, and I could imagine having an in-house artist. It's almost someone that isn't sitting on the side of the organisations. They're not part of finance or IT or HR or sales. So it's almost like this confidant that anyone can go to, and they don't have to feel embarrassed or fearful that they're the one going to the in-house artist. Is that the sort of vision? Does that make?
Yeah. Well, and my personal vision for it is that, I would go in, if it was talking about me, working with an organization, they would set up a little studio for me, someplace that I could do sort of an ongoing workshop, or people, that wanted to come down, needed a break. When I worked for HP a long time ago, and we had a gym in the basement, and I could go down if I had a break during my day, I could go down and work out in the gym. So I like the idea of having an art room in an organization and having someone there to, work with people on an individual basis who want to come in and just try out, the drawing materials, or try out the paint, or try out, have maybe some musical instruments, and we can do a little drumming session, or something, but have a room set aside for a creative break rather than a workout break, have a creativity break. But also, that I would be able to host workshops or meetings in that space too, and do little creative things as part of a 2-hour meeting or a 90-minute meeting, and insert some creativity into that too, and facilitate a discussion and get people out of their comfort zones and coming up with some different solutions.
Oh God, my brain is just like one of your paint pots blown all over the wall at the moment, because I've just got like a million and one different. Honestly, I totally see the value in it, because I love the idea of a creative workout rather than necessarily a physical workout. And I think if you look at the mental health epidemic, more and more people feeling lonely because they're feeling cut off from work. What an amazing way to actually get people to take their downtime and have that bit of self-care. And it's just 20 minutes. What can I paint? What can I come and smash a drum for 20 minutes? Or I think that's a really powerful idea,
Yeah, come and, put some paint on a canvas for a little while. And then, we have some shelves on the side of the room to put the painting, aside, so you can come and work on it later, come and get it when it's dry and take it home. We can hopefully have a wall someplace that we can display people's artwork if they wanted to let us display the artwork, within the organization. I love the idea, and like I say, I do see, the odd organization doing stuff like this, and I find that very encouraging. So.
Yeah, it's amazing, because the other thing that's coming up for me is actually almost around meeting management as well, because everybody knows the 1, 2, 3 hour meetings are just to die in, not die for, to die in. And I just think to have someone like yourself there to help almost bring to life the conversations. You could be on a wall and just have some A3 pieces of paper. So, okay, so what you're saying is this, and what, so people don't always hear. No, we don't listen well. We hear,
Yeah.
we don't listen well. So to have
Yeah.
someone like yourself bring into life the conversation throughout the meeting and then reflect with you at the end of the meeting, what was actually discussed? What did it look like? Oh, that's what we said. Oh, that's what we
Yeah.
discussed. I
Yes.
can
Yes.
imagine it transforming meetings.
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Could. Absolutely.
Oh, right. Right. Sorry, I'm turning into your like biggest sales advocate now. No, it's really, really powerful. I'm going to go back, just segue back a little bit towards, because this makes me chuckle. So you've got qualifications in accountancy, and you're now helping organisations with innovation. It's a really interesting. Again, try not to be too too stereotypical. But how did
Yeah.
you go from finance into innovation and creativity? What was going on in that journey for you?
Oh, there's a lot of things in between. So yeah, I have an undergraduate degree in accounting. I actually have an MBA in IT.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm painting. Yeah, it's definitely a journey. It's definitely an evolution. You know, I started out, I thought I wanted to be an accountant. I worked in finance and accounting for 5.5 years, and that didn't work out. And I went back to school and did an MBA, and I had got doing IT stuff. This is, you know, mid 90s. I got doing IT stuff in the accounting department, because that's where IT started, was in, you know, accounting. And so, yeah, I did this MBA in IT, thinking that I'll do this, you know, this, and work for HP. And when I got to HP after, you know, I was, this is 97, I was 30 years old. It's like, oh, I'm done school, and I'm, you know, and I'm not studying anymore, and I have all this free time on my hands, and what am I going to do? And it's like, everyone else has hobbies. I've spent my life studying. What am I going to do to, you know, I need a hobby. And so I started exploring, you know, when I tried mountain biking, and I tried golf, and I tried, you know, drawing and photography, and they were nice. I liked the drawing and photography because it got me out of my head. I didn't discover painting until 2011, and I fell in love with painting in 2011. I'm like, where have you been all my life? And yeah, I went out the next day and bought paints, you know, and have been painting ever since, and have had exhibitions in Toronto and here in Berlin. And yeah, and it's my passion. Um, and what happened was, I got to figure out a way to bring this painting and stuff into my day job, into the process stuff and the IT stuff that I'm doing, the project management stuff that I'm doing, the, you know, meeting facilitation. I got to bring this creativity stuff in, because I got to make this stuff more fun. Because it is fun. And so it's been an evolution since 2011, 2012, bringing in the painting and the creativity stuff into, you know, the knowledge management. I was doing knowledge management consulting for 19 years, and, you know, have a reputation in that field. And it's like, so I talked to I talked to KM people and go, if you're in charge of, one of the things you're in charge of is knowledge creation. And so knowledge creation is about doing things differently and asking questions. And this is where the creativity stuff comes in, and this is where the innovation stuff comes in. So I'm, you know, working with those folks a lot of times to get them out of their best practices. You know, knowledge management people like lessons learned and best practices, and, you know, and there's nothing wrong with those things. Those are all very good, fine things and noble pursuits. But there's something else out there in addition to those things. And so, yeah, so I'm doing work with those. And like I said, last summer I decided it was time to focus solely on that, and started Entelechy. And yeah, it's been a ride ever since.
Wow, thank you for sharing. I think what comes up for me as you talk about that journey, though, is your curiosity as Stephanie. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
you didn't go, hey, do you know something? I'm in accounts or in IT, and that's my job for life for the next 60 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I can't imagine if I was still doing accounting. Oh man. Yeah, yeah, you're right. There was definitely a sense of, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something else out there. And I think a lot of people go through that, and some people pay attention to it and some people don't, and that's fine. I certainly became quite driven about there's got to be something more. And the secondary question to that, or another follow-up question to that, is what do I actually want? When I decided to be an accountant at 14, it was because everyone around me, all the teachers and adults in my life, were saying, you have to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life. And so I picked accounting because it seemed like the right thing at the time. And honestly, no one should allow a 14-year-old to decide to be an accountant for the rest of their life. So, or at least no one should have allowed me to decide at 14 to become so that was part of the journey too, was this question of who is Stephanie Barnes and what does she want? Ignore the world around me. They're nice and they mean well, but what do I want? And I want to have fun, and I want to paint, and I want to help people realize their potential.
It's really powerful, that message, because there's something there about, so often we're sort of left in the dark, or we hide in the dark 'cause it's safer, for someone else to tell us what to do, or to continue with the status quo, or to not to challenge, etc. So, to step into that light and that opportunity and that, that vision of a bigger version of yourself can be quite scary, can't it?
Oh, absolutely terrifying. Absolutely, and there are times certainly that I have to take a breath and step down and go, okay, tomorrow is another day, and take a break and reevaluate and go, am I doing the right thing? I had a moment, last week, honestly, that I'm like, is this really, I had an opportunity come up, and a really interesting opportunity. I like what the organization is doing. But there's something about it that just doesn't come back to the energy thing we were talking at the top of the podcast about. There's something about it that doesn't feel quite right. I can't quite put my finger on it. There's lots of things about it that I love, but there's something not quite right. And so I've spent some time, the last few days kind of going, what is it? And should I be following this up, or should I say, no, this isn't the right thing for me right now? And so, taking that time for reflection and not just charging ahead because everybody else thinks it's this great opportunity, I should be doing it. It's like, no, I need to think about what's the right thing for me.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I put out an article actually on LinkedIn yesterday called Data Points, Stephanie, because I've got my own journey, as you know, over the last couple of years, sort of waking up. It's what I call it. I've sort of woken up and gone, oh my God, I had a nice car, nice house, nice life, but I felt empty inside. I was like, what's that? How can I have everything the outside world says is success, but feel totally sort of dead on the inside? And I think there's so many of us in that situation. As you say, we've been socialized to follow a path, or to conform, or not to challenge the status quo. And you wake up 40 years later going, oh, that's half my life gone.
Yeah, exactly. And we were talking about why I moved from Toronto to Berlin. I say to people, there was nothing wrong with my life in Toronto. It was perfectly mediocre. And if I was happy with mediocre, I would have stayed, and I don't want to sound like I'm trashing Canada or Toronto or anything like that, because I'm not. I have wonderful friends and family there, and it's not that at all. It's about me and what the right place is for me. And I needed to go out and see what happened if I went to a place that I felt like I belonged and that I felt at home in, despite the language and the cultural differences. I feel that way in Berlin. I have made wonderful friends here. I've got connected to a wonderful network of people here. I'm much happier here. And I don't have all the trappings, like you say, the money and the, all of that stuff that I had in Toronto. It's a different level here, and that's fine. So yeah, there's the quality of life. My life here is much better.
Would you mind speaking about that a little bit? What is it that makes you feel just this natural belonging in Berlin compared to where you were? Again, not that it's good or bad, just like what's the difference for you? What is that feeling for you that feels like home in Berlin?
I honestly don't know where it comes from. I've talked to other people who have expressed the same feeling in Berlin or have experienced it in other places. So it's something internally. I've also met people that can't stand Berlin and can't get out of here fast enough. So it's clearly not a city that's for everyone. And the same with Canada. Certainly I know people that love and adore Canada and can't imagine living anywhere else. So I think there's something inside of each of us that, that we just, there's an energy that says, oh, you're home. And like I say, I don't really know why I have that feeling here. I've traveled to other cities and other parts of the world and not had that experience, but there's something about Berlin. I think for me, it's that no one cares here. And I'm always very cautious when I say, oh, no one cares. But no, I don't feel the sense of judgment and the fact that I'm not living a, I'm not married with whatever 2.4 children living in the suburbs with a white picket fence and this thing that we're sold, this dream that we're sold as children, that of the perfect life, the life you're supposed to have. I don't have any of that, and I honestly don't want it. And this was part of the journey. My dream world is living in Berlin, being an artist, working with organizations to help them be more creative and innovative, having friends around me that love and support me, and honestly living the life that I'm living, or pretty close. This needs some fine tuning a little bit, but I'm pretty close to living the dream, I have to say. So yeah, and why I couldn't do it in Toronto, I just couldn't.
No, it's lovely, but what I find really powerful in what you're explaining here, though, is just that sense of self, that sense of just inside out. It just feels right for you, and that's what matters. You're not trying to please everybody else first, which is such an important message, I think.
Yeah, and like I say, I've met people here that don't like Berlin, and that's fine. And you know what? The world is big. Go and find where you feel at home. Go and find your place in the world. If you don't like Berlin, that's great. Go. There's a million other cities. Go and check them out.
Awesome. If you have a look at, as you know, the title of the podcast is Value Through Vulnerability, and I'm always interested to get my guest viewers to what they feel vulnerability means, because it can mean different things to different people. If you're going to describe to somebody what vulnerability means to you as Stephanie, what would you say, out of interest?
Being open and honest with myself, and most importantly with other people, with the people I'm with. There have been times in this podcast that I've kind of thought, oh, should I be saying that? The little voice in my head. It's like, no, we're talking about vulnerability. We're talking about honesty. I'm not trashing anybody. I'm talking about my experience. And so it's hard. I don't know who's going to hear this podcast, but it's like, no, I need to be open and honest about who I am and my experience and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And that pays off. This is how I've made the friends that I have made and here, that is just through being honest, not through being, pretending to be somebody that I'm not. And,
Jason, I really appreciate, and for anyone that does watch the video on Stephanie's site at a later date, you can see the congruence and the authenticity. And I think that's such a powerful point, because one of my favorite words right now is congruence, particularly with how people show up online versus offline. And I think there's a lot to be said around vulnerability, and, to be seen the same, both on and offline, I think is quite powerful. I don't know if that's something that resonates with you at all, Stephanie.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the energy thing we were talking about before, that when people present themselves one way online and a different way when you meet them in person, that incongruence, is something that you kind of go, oh, well, there's an energy there that they're pretending to be something they're not. And, and for me, it's like, well, can I really trust this person? If they're one way over here and a different way here, then, I don't know that I can work with them, and they are where they are, and they're, having their own experience and their own journey, and that's fine. But I also need to be aware of, how that's going to impact me and the frustrations that might cause. So.
Oh, lovely. Quiz question for you. So, who or what is inspiring you the most right now? Could be anything. Could be personal. It could be societal. Who or what is inspiring you the most right now?
Oh, I'm not good at these kinds of questions.
You can take some time. Come back to it if you want to have a moment.
I don't like getting caught up in that. I like to find there are people, there are artists that I admire, but I wouldn't want to be them. I like the abstract expressionists, but I have my own style, Yeah, I don't tend to get into the hero worship, it's not, no.
You can pass. You can pass.
Yeah, well, and it's more important for me to go, what do I want to, who do I want to be? Who am I, and it's nice to see people doing different things, and having different experiences. And I pick up, there are certainly blogs and books and things that have my bookshelves are lined with books, but I pick out the bits that are relevant and useful for me and leave the rest. And yeah.
That's an absolutely fair answer. No, I find it's quite funny actually. I've got one of these bookshelves. I'm sure we're both the same. Where there's way too many books on that haven't been read yet. But there's this wonderful thing, back to energy again. I find, so my one at the moment is Time to Think by Nancy Klein, and
Okay.
it's been on my bookshelf for nearly 3 years, and now is the right time to pick it up and start reading it because of what you're reading about or who you're connecting with. Or do you ever find that with books that you read, or?
No, but when you mention, yes, I do find things come across my path, at the right time. There was a book that came across my path about 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago, that it's like, about highly sensitive people. And it's like, this is, why didn't I come across this sooner? And yet it's like, that was absolutely the right time for it. I think about another book that comes to mind is Pema Chodron's When Things Fall Apart, which is really one of the books that was key in my journey to figuring out what it was that I wanted for myself and my life. And I recommended that to lots of people and over the years. And I kind of look at that as a starting point for me. And that was absolutely critical, for me to start this journey. So
Awesome. So what's in the pipeline next for you as Stephanie? Are you you've mentioned that you've got into painting since 2011. Are there any other new fangled art forms that you're not doing yet that you're really hoping to be able to pick up?
I'm working with a singer here in Berlin, and we did a little kind of trial, or a little sort of first phase in the fall, of her writing songs to go with my paintings. Okay. So, because I do these abstract expressionist type paintings, or these abstract paintings, and so, but they're all based on thoughts and feelings and, experiences, and how to express things that are happening to me. And one of the reasons I paint is or started to paint at least, is because I didn't have the words. And so she comes and talks to me, and then she goes and writes, songs and music to go with the paintings. And so we had this little exhibition in last fall, here in Berlin, and we're working on something bigger for 2020 or 2021, with more songs and more paintings, and and doing a CD so that people have an artifact to take away with them and things. So I'm quite excited about that. And on the other side, on the more sort of business side, I'm working with some organizations here to help them realize their potential. So, help them figure out how to execute against their strategy and plan, which sounds really left brain process-ish, but it's not. So we'll do some creativity things along the way. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Sounds exciting times.
Thanks, it is.
Oh, amazing. Well, look, as we wrap up now, do you mind letting people that are listening, what's the best way to reach you, whether it be social media, website, etc.? What's the best way?
Yes, social media. I'm on LinkedIn, certainly, Stephanie Barnes. My website is Realization of Potential, with hyphens between the words. So .com. Yeah, that might be, or Google me. I should come up fairly high, Google Stephanie Barnes Berlin. I should come up pretty high in those results. So
that's wonderful. Well, look, I'll make sure all those contact details are on the show notes of the podcast. And Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing your time today.
Great. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.